New from DC News Now, and our partners at the Hill and Emerson College reveal a shocking turn in the Maryland Democratic Senate primary race. It shows Democratic candidates for U.S. Senate Angela Alsobrooks and David Trone are neck and neck. It shows 42% of voters support Angela Alsobrooks, 41% support David Trone, with 12% of the voters still undecided. A drastic change from the last poll back in February. Alsobrooks' support increased by 25 points. Trone's support increased by 9. And to talk more about our poll is Larry Sabato. He's the director of the UVA Center for Politics. Professor, welcome back to Capitol Review.
Thank you so much.
What's your reaction to the poll?
Well, it clearly shows movement, a lot of movement in two different quarters. One is the Democratic primary, where Angela Alsobrooks is now tied with David Trone. And of course, in the previous poll, Trone was well ahead. The other big surprise, I think, to national Republicans certainly is that Larry Hogan, their preferred nominee, and I think the eventual nominee for the Republicans, is now well behind both Angela Alsobrooks and David Trone. So Democrats start off in a Democratic state with a nominee, whoever they pick, who very well might win in November.
Well, Professor, Angela Alsobrooks, you just mentioned, her support increased by 25 points. How do you think she was able to gain that amount of support?
Well, she was the lesser-known candidate. Trone had already started advertising, and he had, I guess, been planning a potential Senate race ever since Ben Cardin decided to retire. Maybe Alsobrooks had been planning it, but I don't, excuse me, I don't think she had the money to get out on television early. So her name ID was relatively low, but she's built it up. She has had some advertising. And she's gotten some key endorsements like the Washington Post and a lot of the elected officials who are Democrats in Maryland.
Professor, if you were Trone or if you were part of his campaign, what would be your strategy leading up to Tuesday's primary? Just continue to knock on doors, or what would you suggest?
Well, in a situation like this, when one candidate, Trone, has potentially a lot more money than Alsobrooks, I hate to say this, but normally the candidate with more money would go after, in a negative fashion, the other candidate as one way to pull her down and push him up. To the best of my knowledge, there hasn't been that much of that. There's been some, but these final days and hours are critical to the election results. It was also interesting that he is leading with those who have already voted and beyond the margin of error. Alsobrooks is ahead among those who have not yet voted and presumably would vote on election day if they vote. So that's another potential advantage that Trone has.
Let's talk about election day. I mean, anything can happen. There could be bad weather. Or, over the years, you've seen, Professor, that factors can impact election day, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's actually a lot of research, even recent research, that shows how bad weather really does depress turnout. And it can depress it more for one party than another or one candidate than another.
Let's switch to the Republican side. You'd mentioned Governor Hogan a short time ago. Obviously, he's still the leading Republican in our poll. But hypothetically, you mentioned it shows him behind Alsobrooks and Trone. How does Hogan get ahead of it in a predominantly Democratic or in a majority Democratic state?
Well, it isn't going to be easy. Now, setting the scene, he is the only Republican, I think, in all of Maryland who would even stand a chance of winning the Senate race. He won 2 governor's races pretty solidly, and Republicans normally aren't favored for any statewide office, so no one will ever rule him out. But he's going to have to raise and spend more money. He's going to have to go hard negative against whichever Democrat the Democrats choose in their primary.
Professor Larry Sabato, thank you very much for joining us.